We continue now at the top of Daf Kuftes Amid Beis in Meseches Bava Metzia. This is Bava Metzia Daf 109b. And the previous Amid, the Gemara dealt with a case of a planter who was removed because he caused a loss. And the Gemara said it was appropriate that he was removed even without a warning, because Rava says, and Rava listed a number of individuals on the previous Amid, and the list here continues with Svar Masa, also a Svar Masa. We'll see in a moment what that means. But all of these various individuals, including the person who's managing the vineyard, Kulan Kimusarin Va'omdin Dami, it's as if they're already warned. There's a standing warning for these individuals. And the idea is Klala Demil, so the general rule is Kalp Seida de Lohadr, anybody who's causing a loss that cannot be repaired, Kimusarin Va'omdin Dami, it's as if they're already warned. We'll take a look at the Mosef Rashi over here with Svar Masa. What's a Svar Masa? Various explanations. Hamisapiras Ansheyo Ir Betasporis. It could be that it is the city barber. Olavler, it could be referring to the scribe. Again, the basic idea is that all these various individuals, including the person who's managing the vineyard, including this planter, they cause these losses that cannot be repaired, and therefore it's as if they're already warned that if there is a loss, they could be removed. And the Gemara continues, Hahusha Sola Da'amar Lahu, there was a planter who said to them, Havu li shivchoi, give me my enhancements, what I improved to the land by planting, to Ba'ino Lamesak La'ard Yisrael, because I want to go up to Eretz Yisrael. Asa Lakame de Rapava Bar Shmuel, he came before Rapava Bar Shmuel, Amar Lahu, he said to them, Havu le shivchi, you have to give him the improvement, the value of the enhancements. Amar le Rava said to him, Iu Ashbach, Aralo Ashbach, did he cause the improvement, and the land did not contribute to the improvement, the land contributed as well. Why does he get the value of all of those improvements, of everything he planted? Amarle said back to him, what I was saying was that you should give half of the value of the enhancements to him, because of course the land contributed as well. But the Gemara continues, Amar Le, Rava said back to Rapava Bar Shmuel, Ad ha'idn, until now, have a shakal balabayas palga v'shasola palga. The balabayas, he would take half, and the planter would take half. But now that this planter is leaving, boy lemesav monsa larisa is going to have to give a portion to the new sharecropper, and so therefore that's going to be too much of a loss for the balabayas. We'll see Rashi in a moment. Amar Le, Rapava Bar Shmuel said back to Rava, Riva de shivcha ka'amina. What I was saying was, he should give him 1/4 of the enhancements, not 1/2 of the enhancements. And Rashi explains, Amar Le said to him, Ana palga b'shivcha ka'amina. Again, this is Rapava Bar Shmuel. He said, what I meant to say is you have to give him half of the value of the enhancements. Kederach sha'ar shasolim she'enan mistalkim. It's like other shasolim, like other planters who don't leave, they always are entitled to half of the produce. And then the Gemara says, Hashta kaboy lemesav monsa le'arisa, but if you're going to give him half, it's still not fair, because he's going to have to give a certain portion to the new sharecropper. And Rashi explains as follows. Kolomar means to say as follows. Kevan de mistalik lo below zamano. The issue over here is that this planter, the person who planted these trees, he is now leaving early. So amai shakel palga b'shivcha, why should he be entitled to take half of the value of the enhancements? Let's say, for example, he planted 6 trees. Right now we were saying that he would get the value of 3 of those trees, but that doesn't make sense. Why doesn't that make sense? Because until now, have a shakel balabayas palga b'peiros. What would happen is that the balabayas takes half of the produce. V'zeh ha'yosa ba kol avodaso, and this person who's the planter is doing all of the work. Kamishbat arisan, just like a sharecropper, and each one is taking again half of the produce. Now Hashna, now that this person is leaving, kaboy lemesav monsalarisa, what's going to happen is that the balabayas is going to have to pay a portion to the new sharecropper. That new sharecropper is entitled to get what a regular aris, who's not a planter, just an aris who takes care of the property, that person is entitled to a certain portion. So he's going to have to give that to the aris. So achshav, so now zayitol kol hamagialo, this person is going to take everything he's supposed to get, v'yelech, and he's going to leave, meaning again he's going to take 50% of the value of the enhancements, essentially as if he owns 50% of the trees in this orchard, and he's going to leave. And now the balabayas is going to need to take the avodas hakerem, meaning he's going to need to pay the new sharecropper for the work that the new sharecropper is going to do. Now the way of a sharecropper is that he does work and he gets 1/3 of the produce. It comes out that the balabayas is going to lose 1/3 from his half every single year if this is what you're going to pay the planter. And what the Gemara means to say is that if this planter is leaving and essentially taking the value of his enhancements, he's taking the 50%, so now all of that 50% is gone, but he also has to continue to pay now 1/3 to the new sharecropper, so that's going to represent a total loss to the balabayas, whereas if the planter would have stayed on, the balabayas would not have lost nearly that much. And the Gemara then continued that Rapava Bar Shmuel responded that it's really riva de shivcha. shivcha. He's not taking half of the enhancements, but just a quarter. And l'kaman mefarish v'yazal, as the Gemara continues, it will explain exactly what this means. And the Gemara continues, Savar Rav Ashi, Lameimar Rav Ashi thought to say, Riva, that when we're saying a quarter over here, he's giving a quarter to this planter who's leaving, Dehu Danka, it's really a quarter, but it really means a 1/6. What it really means is a quarter of the 2/3 that now goes to the Balabayas. The Amar Rav Menyume Breder Rav Nechume, because Rav Menyume, the son of Rav Nechume, said, B'yasra de shakel shasola palga, in a place where the planter is entitled to half, meaning half the improvements, V'arisa tilsa, and a sharecropper is entitled to 1/3 of the improvements. So Hai shasola de boilis taluke, let's say a shasola planter, he wants to leave early. So Yahavinan le shivcha, so we have to give him his enhancements. Umisalkinan le, and we remove him. Ki hechi de lo nimti hefsid le balabayis, and we have to do it in a way where the balabayis is not going to lose. Now the idea over here is that, again, let's say you have a situation where there were 6 trees planted and each one is worth a dinar, to keep it a simple case. So really, had the shasola stayed on, the balabais is going to get the value of 3 trees, and the shasola is going to get the value of 3 trees. And what they're saying over here is that if the shasola leaves early and then the arisa comes in, and he's entitled to 1/3, so he's going to get his 1/3 at the end, whatever you give the shasola, you can't give him so much that when you then give the 1/3 to the arisa, that the balabais is going to lose. And so the Gemara now does the math. Now, if you're going to say that a quarter really means a 1/6, and we'll see Rashi exactly how the math works, but the point is, if a quarter really means a 1/6, so then what it really means is you're giving the shasola 1/6 of 6. You're giving him just one of the trees, the value of 1 tree. So then it works out fine, because then when the Aris leaves, the Aris is going to be getting 1/3, so 1/3 of the 6 trees is going to be 2 more trees. That means a total of 3 trees have been given away, and the Balabayas gets 3 trees. Everything works out. Eloyamrit Riva Mamish, but if you're going to say that the Balabayas actually has to give a quarter of the trees to the Shasola who leaves, so 1/4 of 1/6 is going to be 1.5. That's an extra half, because you're then going to give 2 to the Aris. It's going to be a problem. If you're going to say Riva Mamish, Kamati Lepseida La Balabayas, Palgadinka, what's going to then happen is that you're going to have a loss of the Balabayas of 1/2 of 1/6. Again, that's the loss of 1/2, and so that's going to be problematic, and that's why Rav Ashi initially thought to say that the quarter means a quarter of the 2/3 of the Balabayas, which really means 1/6. And Rashi explains, Savar Rav Ashi l'meimar riva detrei tilse hamagin lebalabayis. Rav Ashi thought to say that when we're saying that we're giving 1/4 to the planter, it's 1/4 of the 2/3. So again, you're going to have to take the 2/3. Again, if you have a situation of 6 trees, so 2/3 is going to be 4, and you're going to take 1/4 of that, which is going to be 1, and that's essentially 1/6. Mishatotzi hashlisha yitzdarach litein laris, because as we said, you're going to have to give 1/3 to the Aris, and the idea is you're not only giving the Aris 1/3 of the produce, you're going to give him 1/3 at the end as well. He's going to get 1/3 of the enhancements. And so therefore, if you do the math, the Aris that's Yored Law that's going to work it is going to get, he's going to get 1/3. So then if you're going to do 1/4 of 2/3, which is the 2/3 remaining, that's going to be 1/6 of the entire improvement. And Rashi gives the example that we gave. Let's say the improvement, the value of the enhancements is 6 dinarim. You can say he planted 6 trees and every tree is worth a dinar. So Yotzi Mehen Shlish, so then you have to take out 1/3 Sha'asad Litain La'aris. You're going to take out 1/3 of that, which you're going to end up giving to the Aris because he's entitled to 1/3. So 1/3 of 6 is going to be 2. So you're going to give 2 to the Aris. Nosru Dala Dinar Mehem. Now you have 4 dinarim left. Yitol Hashasal Dinar, and so the planter is going to take 1/4 of that. He'll take 1 dinar. V'hainu Riva B'mai Demata L'Balabais. That happens to be 1/4 of what the Balabais was supposed to get. To Danka de Shivcha Kuli. That's 1/6 of the entire improvement. Again, Danka is a shasus. That's 1/6. And the reason is because if you do it in that fashion, again, the Balabai is not going to lose anything. You're going to give away 2 to the Aris, you'll give 1 to the Shasola, and the rest of the 3, 50%, is going to go to the Balabais. He's not going to lose with this arrangement. In a situation where the person who's the planter, he takes half and he works it forever, and he's getting 50%. But then the sharecropper gets a third. That means to say the difference is a sharecropper is going into a vineyard that's already been planted. He's not planting any trees. He's just taking over a vineyard that has trees. Then he works at Notel Shlish Beperos. He gets 1/3 of the produce. So again, you have the situation where the Shasola leaves early and the Aris comes in. So Hai Shasola de Boy is Taluke Shaiminanle. So if the Shasola wants to leave, we have to do an evaluation. The evaluation has to be an evaluation in which the Balabais won't lose. You have to do the math in a way where he won't lose because this person left early. And so that's why the Gemara said, Yamra b'shlama dinka, shakel shasala shaper. If the planter gets 1/6, it's good. D'chiyadar shakel arise tilsa hare gimel dinarim. Because then when the arise, he takes his third, so you're essentially having a total of 3 dinarim, bein shneim, between the two of them. Pashalei palga de balabayas, kedahave shakel ad hashta, and the balabayas is going to get the half he was supposed to get all along. Elo yamrit riva mamish, but if it's a quarter that goes to the shasala, that's dinar v'chetzi, that's 1.5 dinar. V'aris yitol shalish hein beis dinarim, and then the aris, the sharecropper, is going to get a third, which is 2. So 2 plus 1.5, you're extra by 1/2. You now have 3.5. So pseida lebalabayas chatzi dinar mimechitza. So then the balabayas is going to lose that half a dinar. So that would be problematic. That's why Rav Ashi thought what he thought. And the Gemara continues, Amarle Ravacha, Breder of Yosef, Rav Ashi. Ravacha, the son of Rav Yosef, said to Rav Ashi, V'lei malei, let the planter say to the owner, Ant monsa dilach havle lari, so you give from your portion to the sharecropper. V'anna monsa dili, my deboina, vidna be, and I'll do with my portion whatever I want to do. Amar, so he said back to that argument, Kimot is l'shchitas kachim, when you reach shchitas kachim, when you reach essentially Meseches vachim, tava, actually, then you'll ask me that question. And Rashi explains, V'lei malei shasola, let the planter say, Ant monsa didach havle larisa, you have to give from your portion to the sharecropper, sheyitrach bo hachetzi shelcha, sheyamutal olai lasos, meaning to say the sharecropper is essentially working that half which I was supposed to be working on your behalf, that half of the property. Now instead the sharecropper is going to be working. V'ato ochel peiros, and you're the one that's going to get the produce from that. Havle larisa, you give that to the arisa. V'olai lenachos mechelki kafi hamagielo, and I'll have to deduct from my portion, from my half, whatever it is that he is getting. And if you do the calculation in that fashion, v'hainu riva mamish, it would turn out that if you do it in that fashion, the planter is actually going to get an actual quarter, meaning again, if you had a situation of 6 dinar, he's going to get dinar v'chetzi. He actually does have an argument to get a dinar and a half, and Rashi now explains. Ketzad, how so? Tolata shlosha rive hakerem lechelkacha. Take for yourself, this is what the planter says to the owner, you take for yourself 3/4 of the vineyard as your portion of the vineyard, meaning to say, if again you have 6 dinars, so you're going to take 4.5, that's 3/4. And mehen titen hashlish la'aris, and give from that 4.5, you should give 1/3, the 1/3 that the aris is owed, you should give to him. Now 1/3 of 4.5 is going to be 1.5. Nimtzas ochel kol hashana chatzi peiros hakerim below Metziah, so it comes out that the person is going to have half of the fruits of the vineyard without having to spend anything, meaning to say, in a situation where the owner takes, so to speak, 4.5, and he gives 1.5 to the aris, now he's left with 3, means to say, now he's gotten his 3, he's gotten the half of the kerem that he was supposed to get. And then the argument continues, Monsa Didi, now in terms of my portion, because what remains now is 1.5, that's the portion that went to the planter, my deboina avid nabe, I can really do whatever I want with that. What that means is as follows. Ani emchor la'acherim horavia. In theory, let's say you actually gave me the 1.5 in terms of the actual trees. I could sell that portion. I can sell that quarter hamagia liyadi, which I got. V'lo shayach gaboy lemitan monsa larisa. I don't have to give a portion to the sharecropper. Meaning, let's say he would have taken, instead of taking money, he would have taken the actual plants. So in that situation, he could just take them with him and leave, and there doesn't have to be any portion to go to the sharecropper from that. Because the person, it's already sold, the person has removed himself, hakona yored v'yasav yochel, whoever I sell my portion to, that person will go down, he'll work it himself, he'll eat from the produce. Now if you want instead to pay me off, this is what the planter is saying to the owner, if you want to pay me off and you want to give me my 1.5 and instead keep all 6 of these trees, I don't have to do work for you and then you're going to eat from my produce for free. If you're going to decide that you want to give my portion, you want to buy me out and then give it to a sharecropper to work, so you should take from that portion that you decided to do that, take the half a dinar from there, that's 1.5 dinar, you'll take the half dinar from there for the sharecropper, you'll get the dinar from there, so you're going to get 2/3 of that, because now you're essentially buying it off from me. And if you do the calculation in that way, so Rapapa really does mean that he gets a quarter, meaning to say again, this planter is going to get 1/4, he's going to get 1.5 dinar of the 6 dinar. And if you break down this argument, essentially what the planter is saying is the planter saying that if I'm splitting with you 50-50, so I'm supposed to take 3 and you take 3. But the issue is that the 3 I'm taking, really I'm supposed to continue working that 3 and give you the payros. I'm not doing that. That's why you're losing out. That's your argument, because you need to bring in a sharecropper. And so therefore, in order to make up for that, we're going to split that remaining 3, 1.5, 1.5. I'm going to take 1.5 with me and give 1.5 to you. That leaves you, the owner, with 4.5, and that leaves the planter with 1.5. But what the planter is now saying is that if you're going to owe to the sharecropper his portion, really on the portion that I'm taking, in theory, I can just take that and go completely, and you only have to worry about a sharecropper on your portion of the 4.5. Now, if you want to buy me out and you want to pay the sharecropper for all 6, so that really doesn't have to come from me. And so that's why essentially the planter is arguing that he is entitled to a quarter, he's entitled to 1.5. And then again, if the owner wants to buy out the portion of the planter and have all 6 and give the full 2 to the sharecropper, so some of it is going to have to come out of his own money. That's the argument that the planter is making to get 1/4. And Rashi continues, Rav Ashi's response was, Ki motis l'shchitas kodshim, when you reach shchitas kodshim, then you can ask me, Hikarti bach means I recognize in you, Shata chodud v'yodei lahamik ulhakshos, that you're sharp and you know how to ask well. V'chi motis l'meseches vachim, when you reach Meseches vachim, sheyamuka, which is deep, ta'akshi li v'etin leiv, l'taris l'fishay laschi, you should ask me questions, I'll be able to answer you, meaning I recognize that you're asking a very strong question. V'yeshom, and Rashi says that some people understand this line to mean, dechuye matri, that he was pushing him off, like ask me then, your question really is no good. Veloi, but that's not the case, says Rashi. Dal karchach kibule kibla, because really the truth is that Rav Ashi accepted this question. Chada de kushim alihi, number one, it is a strong question. V'yod, further, midakamar kasavar Rav Ashi, from the fact that the Gemara at the beginning said that Rav Ashi initially thought lameimar, that's what he thought to say, meaning he thought it was 1/6. So mechlal, that implies the maskana lav hachiu, that wasn't his conclusion. His conclusion really was that the planter is entitled to 1/4. And the Gemara continues, Gufa, returning to what we said above, Amar Rav Menyume bereid Rav Nechume, Rav Menyume, the son of Rav Nechume, said, Bi'asra de shakal shasala palga, in a place where the shasala, the planter, takes half, V'arisa tilson, a sharecropper, takes 1/3. So as we said above, again, Hai shasala de boyis taluka, if you have a shasala, you have a planter who wants to remove himself earlier than he's supposed to, Yavinon le shivcha, you give him his enhancements, Umisalkinan le, you remove him in a fashion, Ki hechi de lo lifsad balabais, in a fashion that the balabais will not lose out, because now he has to pay a sharecropper, so we don't want the balabais to lose, as we explained above. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Menyume bereid Rav Nechume, Rav Menyume, the son of Rav Nechume, says, Kufa sab, if you have an old vine, palga, so then the planter receives half, Shotfa nahara, but let's say the river floods it, so then he receives a quarter. And Rashi explains, Kufa Sava Palga means to say as follows, Gefen Sheizkina Bekerim. Let's say you have a vine that ages in the vineyard. Hareu Keshar Zemoro Shecholken Bahem. So that's it. We're talking about where it naturally ages. It's not something unexpected. It's like any other vines that are divided. Venotel Ba Shasola Palga, and the Shasola, the planter, he's going to get half of that vine. Keshar Peros, like any other produce. To Kevan De Urcha Bahachi, because since this is something that happened that's natural, Adaita Dehachi Nocha. So that's the original intention all along, that a Shasola always gets half. Now let's say something happens that's unexpected. Shot fanar, let's say it's flooded by a river. Ubo lechalak ha'etzam, and now they want to divide up the wood because the idea is that it's not going to produce peiros. Havalei kishasola de mistalik below zimne, that we treat like a planter that leaves early. V'shalkal rivin, you take a quarter, just like we said above, he takes a quarter. And Rashi continues and notes, Shot fanahara, when a river floods it, pa'amim sha'okran lagamri, sometimes it totally uproots the branches. Upa'amim shashotef esakarko machisho, and sometimes it floods the earth and it weakens the earth. Ve'ein roy litzmoach bo klum ad zman meruba, you can't plant anything for a long time. And the Gemara continues, how gavra de mashkan pardeisa lechavre le'eser shnin, there was a person who gave an orchard as collateral to his friend for 10 years, ve'kosh lechamesh shnin, and then it aged in 5 years. Abaye Amar Abaye says, pirahav, it's considered to be like produce, meaning to say the trees are now like produce and they can be taken by the lender. Rava Amar Rava says, no, karnahav, that's considered to be like the principal, you have to protect the principal for the borrower, and therefore v'ilokech bo karka, therefore the wood should be sold to buy other land, v'uochel peiros, and then the malva, the lender, will consume the produce. And Rashi explains how Gavra de Mashkin Pardes Lachavre, again, a person gave his collateral in orchard to his friend, Mashkin Lo Kerem B'Mashkanta de Surah Inami Ben Achyasa. The idea is he gave him a vineyard. It could be in the formulation of Mashkanta de Surah, which essentially is you take the produce and then you deduct accordingly from the loan, or it could be Ben Achyasa, which means you have fixed deductions for every year that the lender has the property. Vikosh means his skin, it aged uvizmano. This happened in the normal, natural fashion. Shayaroy lakach, that's what it should have aged. It aged in 5 years. And so there was a machlokas amoroim, pirahavi. One opinion is it's considered to be like peiros, it's considered to be like produce, meaning eitzim shabo, the trees within that orchard are considered like produce. V'yitlem hamalvin, then the lender can take them. And again, that was the opinion of Abaye, and Rava said that it's considered karna, it's considered to be principal, so you sell the trees and you buy other land and the lender eats the fruits from the new land. And the Gemara continues, Meisvei, we have a question from the following brisa, Yavesh ha'ilan o nixas. This is also talking about a case of collateral. Let's say the tree dries or it's cut. Shneim masurim bo, so they're both prohibited, meaning both the lender and the borrower are prohibited from that tree. Ketzad yasu, so what should they do? Yimachru leitzim, they sell the tree for its wood. V'yilkach behen karka, and then they purchase with that money, they purchase land. V'ochel peiros, and the lender, he takes the peiros, the produce, from that new land. It seems to be exactly like Rava, and it's a question on Abaya. And the Gemara says, my lav, is it not? Yavesh dumya denixas. The case is it dries out, similar to the case where it is cut. Ma nixas bismano, just like when it's cut in its proper time. This is not something that happened early. Af yavesh bismano, so to it dried out in its proper time, exactly like the case above, and it seems to be a support for Rava in a question on Abaya. V'katani yilkach ben karka v'ochel peiros. It says that you purchase land with the money, and then he eats the malva, eats the peiros, he eats the produce. Alma karnahavi. You see that it's considered to be like principle. And the Gemara says, lo no nixas dumya de yavish. It could be what the brisa means is that it's cut down, but similar to drying out. My yavish belows mano, just like drying out is talking when it happened early. So af nixas belows mano, so too was cut down not in its proper time, meaning it happened early. And in that case, Abaye would actually admit that it's considered to be like principle, and you sell it, you purchase new land, and again the malva eats the peiros. And Rashi explains, "Man nixas bismano," just like a tree is generally cut down in the proper time. Shein adam kotzetz ilan sha'os peiros. A person doesn't cut down a tree while it's still producing fruits. Ela bismano shechada lo me'asos peiro. People cut down trees when they stop producing the fruits. And Rashi continues, "Below zmano." Again, the Gemara answered, it's talking about not in its proper time. It happened early. Umoda Abaye below zmano shechada lasos pri. Abaye would admit that if this happened early, not at the proper time, the kaven de lav urche lav piro. So since it was something that happened that was not natural, so the tree is not considered to be like produce at that point in time. That was not the original understanding of the terms of the agreement. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, coming here, a proof from the following Mishnah Meseches Ksubis, Naflu lo gefanim v'zeisim zekenim. Let's say it falls to her, this is talking about a married woman, and her father dies, and so she inherits gefanim and zeisim, she inherits vines, she inherits olives, and they're older, Rashi says, Naflu lo isha mishanisis, meaning after she's married, Mesa via her father dies, v'naflu lo birushan, she inherits these trees as an inheritance, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video, on Daf Kuf Yud Amud Aleph.